What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to take a bit of a deeper look at the 6v6 maps that we're going to be getting throughout Season 3 of Modern Warfare 3, because I have seen several conversations surrounding many of these maps and whether or not they're remade or repurposed, and toward the end of the video, that's going to lead me into a discussion. I just wanted to share my thoughts on repurposed versus remade maps in Call of Duty. But the first thing I wanted to talk about here is something I've been seeing a lot throughout the comment sections of my video, as well as on Reddit and Twitter and just everywhere. I've seen a lot of people claim that the new 6-star map, which is set on the top of a high-rise in Dubai, many people are claiming this is literally a copy and paste of Raid, and this isn't actually a brand new map. This is a remade map that they're trying to pass off as a brand new map. And when we take a look at the overhead view that we saw for a brief moment in the trailer compared to Raid in Black Ops 2, if you focus your attention toward the pool side of the map, it looks like there was definitely some inspiration at the very least from Raid when creating 6-star. And especially if we take this image right here of 6-star from the blog post, and then compare it to standing in a similar position on Raid in Black Ops Cold War, which was a 1-to-1 remake from Black Ops 2. It was just easier for me to hop on Cold War since I had that installed. You can see that it looks very, very similar here, and I can definitely see how some people thought, hey, this is Raid, isn't it? Well, when we look at the actual maps side by side here, it's quite obvious that aside from that pool area, these maps are not the same. Keeping in mind as well here, I don't know the exact scale of 6-star. I did my best to estimate the size of 6-star compared to Raid, and I do believe 6-star may be very slightly smaller than Raid, but I could be mistaken on that since we don't actually have our hands on 6-star yet. But in general, again, if you eliminate the pool side of the map from the equation, there's really not much else that's similar between 6-star and Raid, aside from the fact that it is a 3-lane map, just like most Call of Duty maps are. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out, just for anybody that may be confused, because I know some people thought it was literally a 1-to-1 remake, and it's obviously not the case. Next up, another point of confusion that many people had with the blog post and these new maps is for many of them, they specifically stated if it was a remake or a repurposed map. And I also saw a lot of comments claiming that the map Grime was incorrectly labeled as a brand new map rather than a repurposed map, because according to them, it actually came from a section of the campaign, and that didn't quite click with me immediately, so I went into the campaign again, and I found that section where this is apparently based on, and this is the entire section that could be related to the Grime map. And the only part we had access to here is this little tunnel section, which loosely lines up with the general aesthetic of this little section that they showed us in the blog post. However, like I said, we're limited to that tunnel. You can't even see outside of the tunnel, and from here on, for the rest of the mission, you're down in the subway area. Whereas it is clear the multiplayer map is set on ground level, and a good portion of the map is outside. And this is something where you not only couldn't access that, you couldn't even see that area from the campaign. So unlike Albaran Hatchery from Modern Warfare 2, where they literally took a section of that map and then reworked it, adjusted some pieces of cover, definitely changed some things, but turned that into a multiplayer map. In this case, it appears they actually designed this map from scratch for multiplayer, and they just used the general setting and aesthetic from that campaign mission in order to create this, which is something we've always seen in Call of Duty. In either case, what that means is this was correctly labeled as a brand new original multiplayer map, not a repurposed map. And this is where I just wanted to get into a bit of a conversation about remastered and repurposed maps in Call of Duty and whether or not I think they're a good thing or a bad thing. Because out of the 6 maps that we're getting this season, 3 of them are brand new original maps, not repurposed, not remade, nothing like that. Then we've got 1 remade map, which is the remake of Sphere, and this one is called Grow House. And then the last 2 of those maps, these are repurposed maps where they're actually taken from a section of various Warzone maps. So in the case of Checkpoint, this is taken from a section of Rebirth Island, and then in the case of Tanked, this is coming from the Vondel Zoo area on the Vondel Warzone map. And when it comes to these repurposed maps, whether they come from the campaign missions or if they come from the section of a Warzone map, personally, I think there's a lot of potential here, and I think these can be great, as I'm sure it saves them a ton of time with development and allows them to add more content to the game. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons we're able to get 6 6v6 maps this season, rather than the typical like 3, maybe 4 if we're lucky. So at least in that sense, I think there's a lot of potential with repurposed maps, and I think they can be excellent additions to the game just to beef up the overall amount of content. However, when it comes to these repurposed maps, I've always got a little bit of a concern about the quality of the map. Because in many cases, it's pretty obvious that they weren't designing that section of the Warzone map or that section of the campaign map from the ground up to be used in the future as a multiplayer map. And as a result, it feels like they're just cutting out a section and then trying to make it work for multiplayer. And in situations like that, that can definitely bring up some concerns about the quality of the map and how well it's going to play and flow and how well the spawns are going to work as well. And honestly, this is my biggest concern with Checkpoint. Out of all of these maps we're getting this season, Checkpoint is the one where I'm looking at that map overhead and I'm thinking, is this really going to play super well for multiplayer? And at this point, I'm just quite skeptical about this map in particular, since I doubt when they were designing Rebirth Island for the first time, they were thinking this section is going to end up being a multiplayer map at some point years down the road. And while I'm sure they most likely made a bunch of adjustments, added pieces of cover, maybe changed a few things here or there to really make it work for multiplayer, like I said, I'm just a bit skeptical at this point. Now, I'm hoping I'm just proven completely wrong. I hope this map plays great, and maybe it will. But it is just something I wanted to bring up as an example of a repurposed map that didn't appear to be designed early on with multiplayer in mind. In saying that though, it seems pretty clear that in many cases, these repurposed maps, whether they're coming from campaign or Warzone maps, I do believe many of these are created from the ground up as they're creating that map with the specific idea in their minds that this could or will definitely one day become a multiplayer map. And this is something I noticed right away with Vondel. I actually remember in the lead up before Vondel was released and before we got the overhead view of the map and everything, Activision did mention to me that there would be multiplayer maps contained within Vondel, but that was the only information they gave. They didn't mention what the maps would be called, what sections of Vondel would be turned into a multiplayer map, and therefore when they eventually revealed the overhead view of Vondel, I started taking a look at that thinking, okay, which sections of these are going to be the multiplayer maps that we're expecting? And it turned out those sections at the time were Kunstenaar District as well as Vondel Waterfront. However, I actually pulled out several other areas of Vondel that looked like they would make for perfect multiplayer maps, and the main one that stood out to me was the Vondel Zoo area. And it just so happens that that section from Vondel is the tanked map that we're going to be seeing for Season 3. And in this case, I'm actually quite confident that when they were designing that section of the map for Vondel, they were specifically designing that with multiplayer in mind. And I believe it's always been their intention to turn that into a multiplayer map at some point in the future. And in my eyes, this is the ideal way of handling repurposed maps. As you're designing Warzone maps, make sure you're including sections that would work quite well for multiplayer, so that when the time comes to be adding multiplayer content to a game, you can just pull that section out, make a few adjustments, of course. You're still going to have to make some adjustments to make it work for multiplayer, but just make it so it's as easy as possible to take that section, make the few adjustments you need to make, and boom, you've got yourself a multiplayer map without having to start from scratch or without having to take a section that clearly wasn't designed for multiplayer and then trying to make that work and trying to sort of force it into a multiplayer map. So overall, I think repurposed maps can actually work really well in Call of Duty, and I honestly hope to see more of this type of repurposing going forward with Call of Duty. Now this just leaves us with remasters, and my opinions on this are a lot more simple. I love a good remaster being added to the game. The sense of nostalgia is excellent, plus many times the maps that they're remastering are maps that have already proven themselves to be good, solid maps that the community generally enjoys. Now, at the same time, I don't want to see way too many remasters. I think remasters are great as the odd, like, sprinkle-in addition alongside brand new original maps or repurposed maps that are brand new for multiplayer, at least. And so far, post-launch, I think Sledgehammer's been doing a great job with that in Modern Warfare 3. Although, of course, this is a bit of a unique game since all of our launch maps were remastered maps from the original Modern Warfare 2. And that's going to be a positive or negative depending on who you ask, but as far as post-launch content goes, I think they have been handling it well by not including too many remasters, and they have been doing a great job so far of adding brand new original maps that we've never played before, at least in multiplayer. And with that is going to wrap it up for today's video. I just wanted to clear a few things up early on, and then share some of my thoughts on remasters versus repurposed maps, since it has been on my mind a little bit since they revealed this blog post. And of course, this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, how are you guys feeling about our Season 3 maps that we can expect to see? And second, what are your thoughts on them using repurposed and remastered maps for post-launch content in Call of Duty? Do you guys like it when they do this, or do you prefer just brand new original maps all the time, even if it means we would be getting fewer of them? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.